Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, wherever you're tuning in. We are Slava and Jonathan, bringing you the Side Quest podcast, where we talk about character development, stories, and all things that are world building. And we occasionally take side quests, because, frankly, that's how conversations work. Just as a reminder, this whole show is spoiler heavy. So sit back, tune in, and join us on this episode of Side Quest.
Welcome back, Jonathan. It has been a while.
Welcome back, Slava. Yeah, the break was long, but good, and we have some exciting updates to release to the people here in just a couple weeks.
That we do. I'm excited. The people are going to be excited. I think you're excited.
I am. I really enjoyed taking a break. I went on my honeymoon with my wife, and that was a good time. We went to Portugal.
Nice. I did not go to Portugal, but I did go on an anniversary trip.
Was it as fun as last year?
It was a lot more calm.
That's
We're
good.
not beach people. We found that out.
Neither are we.
So we went back to the mountains where there are forests and cabins and bears, which is a lot more interesting than degenerates at the beach shooting guns and screaming about their baby daddies.
At 2 a.m.
At 2 a.m. From 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., actually. But anyway, I digress. That story is to be forgotten, even by me.
Oh, I was going to give the people a quick highlight reel of last year's anniversary trip.
Oh, yeah, well, you can say it. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so last year, Slava and his wife go on their anniversary trip like normal people do, and he comes back and he's just, like, you think you've seen Slava angry on some of the episodes. You have seen nothing. He comes back and he's just, like, absolutely in a whirlwind of anger and frustration. Rightfully so. When you go away with your spouse, you're trying to get away. You're trying to have a good time, relax, whatever. Well, he's in some sort of friggin' duplex with some people who are probably the dregs of society, but if they can afford an Airbnb, maybe, they're a step above, right? But they're shooting off guns, fireworks, and screaming at each other and getting pissed drunk. They're back to back on the walls, right? So you can hear everything because in a duplex, there is no padding. People don't make duplexes with proper soundproofing, so you can hear everything. So the kids are screaming, I presumably wife is screaming, the husband, there's guns shooting. Remind me correctly, but you guys left. You just left. You're like, we're not doing this.
Yeah, no, I
We're
left.
just not.
The cops came by. I didn't call them. So the neighbors called them. But the cops came by, and it went quiet for about 10 minutes, and then they started doing it again. My dogs are going nuts. I can't sleep.
Yeah.
And fine. These asshats are who they are. You can't change human nature, or animal nature in this case. But when I called the owner of the Airbnb, no, let me back up. The owner had the gall to text me and tell me, I got a report that the police came there by. You did sign a contract where you agreed to not make any noise and be blah, 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 and peaceful and quiet and all that stuff and respectful of my neighbors. I was like, listen, bitch. It's the other shitheads that you rented to that were making the noise. And she's like, the other tenants? I was like, are you dumb? Like, this is your business. This is your duplex. And she refused to give me my money back. I mean, I got my money back because I wore her down and wore Airbnb down until they gave me a money back. So the whole trip actually cost me $50. I didn't get back
fees or something.
Part of the fees back, yeah.
Does Airbnb let you submit like materials? Like, hey, I've got a recording of the stuff that was going on.
I'm sure they do. It never got that far.
Okay.
And it was funny that the thing that broke Airbnb, because they kept getting back and forth with me, and the thing that broke them was the representative who's like a manager of a manager somewhere up in the chain in the customer satisfaction bureau or whatever the hell they call it. And he's like, well, sir, I think we should start the police report. And I was like, are the police going to give me my money back? They're like, no, but you said there were guns were shut off. I was like, yeah, it's too bad they didn't kill each other. It would have been great if these people took themselves off the face of the earth. Like, do I look like somebody that cares about a gun being shut off? Unless they're firing at me, I don't care. I'm like, who's going to give me my money? The South Carolina police are going to give you my money, or you're going to give me my money? Hey, you are the business, right? You take on the risk.
Yeah.
I'm not asking for my money back because the sheets weren't fluffed the right way. I couldn't sleep.
Yeah. I didn't have a mint on my pillow.
So they gave me my money back. And
what do you mean we should start with the police report?
Because the gun was fired.
You're going to see no one's... Sure, but you're not going to see any of your name isn't going to be in it.
Yeah.
Or your wives or your dogs.
Yeah.
Because they didn't talk to you.
Right.
Like, maybe they knocked on your door because they got the wrong side. I don't know.
No, they didn't, but whatever.
Yeah, I think it's a little easy to see who's yelling and screaming on a duplex.
Yeah.
Anyway.
The family of 10 who came in, you know.
Family of 10?
It was like
10 of them?
It was like 10 of them, yeah. So there was the mom and the dad.
Gosh.
There was like 3 auxiliary adults that were just there.
What?
And yeah, so that's
Okay,
and
weird.
then the kids there's like 5 or 6 kids. So that's already around 8, 9 people. Hold on. So 2 adults, the 3 adults, that's 5, and 5 or 6 kids. Yeah, that's 10 adults. Well, 10 people.
Weird.
Then the parking lot, which was just like a little strip of concrete in the back of the duplex.
Yeah.
Like you could fit like 5 cars there. It smelled like piss. There was like White Castle.
Oh.
Bags all over the
Classy
place.
food.
Yeah. It was, but listen, I went in the off season. I went to the place.
Well, so did they.
Yeah. So this is Myrtle Beach, people, if anybody cares. And I went to the part of Myrtle Beach that's supposed to be family friendly. And I did my research. You know, I've asked people who went there.
It was family friendly,
Yeah.
but not for your family.
Not for my family. And I asked, like, which part of Myrtle Beach is not going to be a big old tourist trap? And so this part of Myrtle Beach, and I couldn't tell you exactly where because I've forgotten now. It's been a year. But when we got there, you had to go down a street, and then where the Airbnb was right on the beach, on the other side of the street, but right on the beach. And it was this little strip kind of hidden by big buildings and big hotels, but this little strip of houses and Airbnbs and restaurants. And it was a ghost town. It was beautiful. Well, we went on the beach before the night of, you know, horrors. There was like 3 people on the beach. It was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. Quiet. We had to drive like 10 minutes to find a restaurant that was open. I was like, thank you, God. This is going to be the greatest anniversary ever. Just me and maybe 2 other locals and the beach. Nope. None of that happened.
No.
I wish I had a portal to go to a different world, Jonathan.
Well, although you're going to have a portal to go to a different world in a minute, I want to hear from the audience. Give us your bad vacation stories. Anniversary, hotel, whatever. Like, I want to know, because Lindon, and we'll get into the book here in a second, but Lindon kind of goes on a bad vacation here. I mean, it's a different world. He's in progression fantasy. It's Zengvia. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that incorrectly.
Senzia
style
and
book.
Wuchia. Yeah. I'm pronouncing it probably a little bit incorrectly, but that's what it is, yeah.
Yeah, what kind of bad vacation stories have you had? One quick one that I had was we showed up late to a hotel. We were doing a road trip across the northeastern side of the U.S., so like Maine, Vermont, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, this whole area. We're like popping into a bunch of cities because we'd never been. Me and a bunch of friends. We get to the hotel like 11 p.m. because we like stop places and it's like very chill. We're going where we want to go. We check in. We go to the room. We try and get the door open. Door's stuck. Kind of pops open a little bit, whatever. And we hear inside, "Who's there?" And we're like, "Oh, shoot." They gave us somebody's room. This guy was sleeping. It's like 11:30 or midnight. And so if you're this guy, you know, who's just like sleeping and you hear someone trying to break into your room, you're at a hotel and we're like, "Oh," because, you know, we're new. They just checked us in. But man, I want to shit myself.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Oh man. It was wild. Well, welcome back to SideQuest, everybody. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and make sure that you never miss out on a SideQuest. We're happy to have you back. Now let's take this portal to Ghostwater.
So I'm going to try to give a fairly lengthy overview of Ghostwater. And here we go. We are back with Lindon and Yaren and Mercy. And they have joined Skysworn. They are sent on a mission to Ghostwater, a facility formerly run by the monarch North Strider. Lindon and Orthos enter alongside one member of the Skysworn, who is quickly killed by the True Golds already inside. Harmony Akura of the Akura family, Jan Shumei of Red Moon Hall, Ekiranathot of the Gold Dragons, and Zeal, a greenhorn man with a shattered core. They all enter this pocket world. Jonathan, correct me, yep. So they all entered this pocket world.
Pocket world. Great concept. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's awesome. Inside, Lindon advances to True Gold in his Black Flame core and High Gold in his Pure core. He fights and kills a Kayrenathot, earning him the enmity of Safaranathot. Are we doing, what is this, Lovecraft or Will Wight? What are we doing? I'm looking
the
at
dragons. No. You're getting them within reason. You're getting them mostly right. And like pronunciation in all fantasy, as you know, is just like almost always phonetical because people want to be Tolkien, which I get. You know, grandfather Tolkien giving us fantasy, but yeah, some of the names are.
Well, I'm looking at this. It's
difficult.
Safaranathot. That sounds like a Lovecraftian, demon from the depths. But no, it's just a guy from Cradle.
That's just the weekend gig for that character.
Yep. So this Sophie, as we're going to call him, pledges to obtain vengeance for her death because Ekiri was her sister. After killing her, and this is a thing that happens, Lindon starts killing dudes in this thing. After killing her, Lindon finds a void key to a pocket dimension that she had been carrying. Lindon also discovers Dross, which is a sentient construct, and in his final battle in Ghostwater against Akura Harmony, Dross uses the water of the Spirit of Life and Dream Wells, along with a droplet of mind-enhancing Ghostwater, to merge with Lindon's spirit. Fun times. And become a present like cereals. He offers to help Harmony leave Ghostwater, but he refuses. Lindon leaves and destroys the portal. Now, there's a lot of stuff that happens between those, but that's a little bit more lengthy than we normally give the Cradle series in our little plot overviews, but I thought it was needed because a lot of stuff's kind of happening here. It's another book where there's more than what I remember from the first two books, right? Like 3, 4, and now 5. There's a lot packed into them.
Yeah. So we're coming off the heels of the Bleeding Phoenix's destruction on the Empire and also kind of the rise to power. Like the Bleeding Phoenix wants something we don't exactly know what it is. We find out a little bit in the book here that it's going towards the Labyrinth, which we've heard a little bit about here and there. One of the cool things that I like about Will Wight's writing is he makes sure that he knows what's going on in the rest of the Empire, even though our story is more localized following the main characters.
Yeah.
Lindon, Yaren, now Mercy, Orthos, Little Blue. We still get glimpses of stuff going on elsewhere in the Empire, which makes us feel like the world is a lot bigger than it really is.
Yeah, let's stay on that thought for just a little bit. Because when authors write stories, they build worlds. I often wonder, how do they keep track of what's going on, not in the immediate context of what they're writing or what their main characters, protagonists, antagonists, backstories are, but as they're building a story and building a world that's the size of, Sanderson's Stormlight or Will Wight's Cradle series, I often wonder how much time they spend building out, kind of the auxiliary worlds and the characters that we might never meet, but they're writing certain backstories and certain scenarios that help them fill in the gaps for us, the audience, and give us a more rounded character, a more rounded story in the immediate context. So we're Ghostwater. We're in a pocket world. We have Dross and we have Zeal. Let's take those two.
Yeah.
How do you make both of them engaging, right? How do you...
Well, and unique with their own voice.
I imagine what I would do is I would spend 2 hours a week. Pick your poison, I suppose, for lack of a better term. But you, as a writer, I have this guy Dross. I'm going to spend an X amount of time writing his backstory, filling him out, if you will. So when I place him in my book that I'm writing, what he says, how he acts is believable, irrespective of if the reader knows his backstory. But I filled him out in the
Right.
background. And
Right.
I've been thinking about this because of the never-ending and never-finished efforts of me writing a short story. Like the main character, I'm constantly thinking through, and this is probably why I've never done anything more than just the bare bones with the story. But I'm constantly thinking through, what can I write out? And again, not for the audience to read, but what can I write out on the back? So when I bring that story, bring those things into the forefront, they're believable. But the audience would never know that Eddie, let's say, I don't know, was scared of monsters when he was a kid. Maybe that's actually a good thing because it's going to be like a horror-esque book. But maybe I don't share everything, but I write out enough of a backstory for my own sake, so now I have a grasp on the character. So I wonder if, well, Sanderson probably does this for sure, but I wonder if more authors process these things and how they process it. What is the process for them processing it?
Yeah, so I think that that's kind of the only way to do it, because otherwise, so they say good writing is rewriting. Who says that? I don't remember where the quote comes from, but I just remember learning that in college from friends who were at more prestigious schools than myself in writing, and also from my writing classes. But how are you supposed to write the in-depth knowledge of a character unless you've met them before? How do you meet them before you need them in whatever plot without doing backstories, without saying, hey, this was them in this experience, this was them in that experience? I think Dross is a bad example because we get his backstory. We get the last 50 years of what he is. He was sitting in the well. That's his backstory.
But what's he
Northstar
doing in
made
the
him
well? Like what?
Sitting.
Just sitting, not thinking anything. Never had to.
He wasn't sentient. That's the wonder of his character. He wasn't sentient. So he was this rusted construct just sitting there, he had his little script he was supposed to read. Hey, you have been given the gift of of whatever the well is called.
Eye of the Deep.
It's not the spirit well, it's not Ghostwater. Eye of the Deep. No, that's the key. That's the key. So in terms of writing worlds, and I vaguely recall you saying that Stephen King did this with It, where he like wrote it and then kind of rewrote it. Am I remembering that correctly? Where he like wrote a bunch of stuff and then was like, no, that's not right, and then rewrote a bunch of stuff?
I don't think that was it. It was the book where he did, from what I remember, hands-on research. He went to a town and interviewed a bunch of people in Bangor, Maine, and then made Bangor into Derry, and then gave it, more eerie vibes.
I guess I'll have to re-listen to our episode because I thought he did something like that. Anywho, it doesn't matter. I don't know of another way to do this. This is what I did with my co-author, Christopher. You met him on Dune. He's pretty busy, or he would probably pop back in the world that we were building, and we built a robust world. We started from the creation of time into the present day that we wanted to talk about, which is anywhere from an estimated 3,000 to 10,000 years, roughly. We didn't flesh everything out because that's a little bit much, but we fleshed out a bunch of key moments and key characters, and we put those key characters in situations to go, how would they act? And then we would read it, and we'd go, this doesn't feel like the character yet. And you go, okay, well, what feels wrong or what feels off? And then doing some rewriting. So that's how we did it. And I honestly feel like Tolkien did this too, because of the stacks of notes he had where he wrote a bunch of stuff, and like, he didn't just take his notes and put them into a book. He like wrote histories, vast histories, right? I think you're right, but it is a lot of work. The writing before the writing, if you will.
Right, because you have to make your characters believable. By that I mean, if a character says something, let's say you're meeting a character for the first time, and you know enough about the world to know the societal structures and maybe certain ethnicities within the world, some kind of fantasy type, orcs versus dwarfs or whatever. But when you first meet a dwarf, and they talk in a particular way and they say particular things and they have an outlook or a worldview, they have to be believable in world when you meet them for the first time. They can't be like something that jars you or throws the story off kilter in a straightforward story. I'm sure there's stories like The House of Leaves and some other horror books, psychological horror books that are supposed to be all weird and creepy. For example, I am reading the Amityville Horror, like the book based on the events that went later when it was made into a movie. And the way it's written, it's very, there's not a lot of descriptive terms, right? It's not like the rain pelted the roof like 1,000 bouncing marbles, in the night. It's just like, it was raining hard.
Mm-hmm.
But in the same token, how the author conveys the events, it's still a little creepy. You're like, oh, this feels a little disjointed. These people are stuck in this house and they can't leave because of the entity in the house preventing them to leave, and it's affecting their psyche and their mood. Things are moving. It smells like blood. They feel things touching them throughout the day. The dog is sleeping. They're sleeping too long. Kids are fighting always. They've turned into little monsters. So the way it's written, it's not as descriptive as a lot of other books I read, but it still accomplishes what it's supposed to, is to give you a little bit of an eerie, unsettling vibe. Point is, how does an author make sure that when you first meet a character in a book that's bigger than the Amityville Horror, like a book that has a large world, how do you make sure each time you meet somebody for the first time, they are a robust character, for lack of a better term? They're attractive character. Or if they're a bad guy, they're attractive in a bad guy kind of way, where they're believable. I've said a lot. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I think it's just how we discussed it. I think you have to do the work beforehand, the writing before the writing. And I don't know of another way. If you guys know of another way and you're more familiar with writing, drop it in the comments. Like, let us know how you would do it. Because that's just especially with the fact that on Will's blog, getting back to Will himself as an author, he addresses, like, here are my notes, and then we see the outworking of the book that we read, and they're different. You see, oh, okay, I see what he's doing here, but it's different. Like, we're going to get into this a little bit later in the episode, but Ghostwater itself, he built as a dungeon, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Let's move back to the adventure following Lindon and Yaren and what's going on. One of the things that stood out to me was the prologue, where, again, we get some external person's point of view who is having a power struggle with their servants and finally captured this egg. And then who decides to show up but our little friend Lindon, and he's just like edging the guy on, like, oh, wow, we'd really love to have you take over some towns because you did such a good job at protecting this place. And because Lindon's so familiar with making sure that his words feel authentic and humble, even if he's planning something else, the guy's like, that's right, they should respect me. Da 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 da.
Yeah.
And you're like, and then he just realizes too late, oh, you're trapped.
I enjoyed meeting a different type of Lindon, although he reverts it back to himself with zeal later on. But Lindon in the prologue was fun. And I text Jonathan, I'm like, oh, this one's killing dudes now. Because he's just like, what the hell's going on, man? Lindon Wick over here. So it was fun. I enjoyed the prologue.
The contrast is a good time, too, because we see this person who's powerful, and we saw what he did. I really noticed it more heavily in this book, the different types of contrast where we see a powerful character, how other people respond to that character, and then Lindon shows up, and we know Lindon, and we're aware that Lindon is less powerful. We feel the tension between this of, like, the worlds apart almost, of how weak, it's the wrong word, but, like, not yet skilled enough. Not skilled. Skilled's not the right word. Not yet strong enough, powerful enough to defeat these beings. And we only know that they're powerful by what they did. Like, when they first get into Ghostwater, they're supposed to wait for all the other beings, all the other characters to arrive. Instead, a fight breaks out, and Akura Harmony is just sitting there meditating. And the powerful creatures and beings who are fighting Lindon, who he can't handle, are just kind of like glancing at Akura Harmony like, I hope we didn't mess with him because otherwise we're dead. And so you know that he's more powerful, and extremely so, because they're so scared of him just by that. And he didn't do anything.
That and the fact that Lindon is now pitted against other more powerful characters, right? More powerful people. Like Jai Long, the guy who took his arm, right?
Yep.
He was more powerful than him, and so he took his arm. And now in the middle of this first section of the book, we have him fighting that Akira Thought dragon girl, and it really takes it out of him. He has to work really hard and think on his feet quickly. He's forced to do what he has been doing all his life, but the stakes are higher now, even more higher than with Jai Long, because there's no Atha, nobody to protect him. Orthos is incapacitated for a little bit, and he bests somebody who's a higher rank than him, higher grade than him, because he has been conditioned to always overcome things that are outside his wheelhouse, outside his comfort level. Here it kind of comes to fruition in some sense, where all that training, all those hard knocks have helped him.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons, and I think I mentioned this about Kaladin back in the day too, the resilience that Lindon has to have is something that really draws me to him. Same with Yaren, but they're different types of resilience. It's why I love fantasy, because it's this resilience that the characters have that I am really drawn to, because I feel like I've had to be very resilient myself in my life because of all the circumstances that came against me, things that I didn't choose, things that I did choose. And it's solace. It's comforting. It's comforting to feel like you're not in it alone, even though you can have friends, even though you can, have people support you. When you get to be in the mind of another being, per se, that is also struggling, you can go, oh, okay. And it sometimes makes new connections. Sometimes it reminds you like, hey, you're not alone. But it's this progression fantasy that has really impacted me when I read this stuff, to go, okay, well, it's just another level. It's a new strength. It's a new toughness. It's a new level of resilience. But it really starts to help build a growth mindset in you as a person. And I love that. I love that about having underdog characters that are just like, one of their strengths is resilience. And that's exactly what Lindon drives home in every book, every time.
What I find compelling in these stories, and this is me jumping off on what you just said, what I find compelling about these kind of stories, and specifically Lindon's story, and specifically Ghostwater, is it shows the reader, it shows us how complex life is, right? And you can be resilient, and you can achieve greatness and overcome adversity and overcome your own demons, but never, ever, ever is everything going to be 100% great.
Right.
And never is it going to be 100% horrible. So the example is when Lindon is learning to veil. Orthos helps Lindon veil his core to sneak past Ekiri, but Lindon can only veil his pure core, not his black flame core. So there's still something else that is a challenge. There's still something else that Lindon runs into like a wall. So he's, Orthos helped me with this, but he can't help me with this. It's never an all-encompassing 100%, here's a pill and it fixes everything. Even the water that he drinks that gives him focus in this book, it gives him focus, but it's not like forever lasting. And he's now some super wunderkind, Superman soulsmith. It wears off. He has to drink more. What, in chapter like 13 or 14, when he's dunking his head into the water and he's feeling this rush of energy, but it's not a pleasant rush. So even something as simple as that, nothing happens all at once being wonderful. There's even tension with the good things that happen. I think that's what's attractive about these kind of stories, because even though it's in a completely fictional world, completely fictional characters, what they're going through is compelling and attractive because you and I and other readers have gone through similar things that are analogous in some way to the struggles of these characters in this pocket world we're talking turtles.
Yeah. He's a dragon. Okay.
Excuse me.
Let's get that right. First off, we meet new dragons. We've heard about other dragons, but we finally meet other dragons, gold dragons,
Yeah.
with the terribly difficult names.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Lovecraftian names.
yeah. So moving along, because I could sit here and talk about that stuff for a while. Pull out my David Goggins books, talk to you about that. I know he's your favorite person. You're a big fan of his stuff, which I'm doubling down. You really should read his book. I think you would enjoy it. It's a biography.
Yeah, I probably would enjoy the book, but what I will never enjoy is screaming hustle bros and their 30-second clips on Instagram and TikTok. Even him included, screaming like, to run at 4 o'clock in the morning. No, buddy, you run at 4 o'clock in the morning.
He does.
Don't you?
He does.
And good for him. Nobody cares. Like that. That's it. Nobody fucking cares. Like, just that's great. And him aside, like, that's what I can't stand. And he just happened, either his publicist or him have decided to throw him into the mix, where he's giving me compelling life lessons in 15 seconds or less on TikTok. Leave me alone. Show me a meme. I don't go to TikTok to get motivational speeches.
It's actually the demographic. So in society today, whether you've seen it or not, men across the United States are beaten down. They don't have anything to live up to. They have no responsibility, and they sit in their mother's basement playing video games. And Goggins gives them something to stand up for, just themselves. Like, what does personal responsibility look like? Same with Jordan Peterson. Like, that's why there's this red pill stuff and Sigma bro stuff. And it's because, like, no one has given them a bar to reach, partly because we don't have a coming of age ceremony anymore for guys, girls, or otherwise. Kids don't become adults anymore. That's not a thing. I think it was in the research that I read from Malcolm Gladwell that teenagers didn't exist till the 50s or 40s. Does that sound about right?
Sounds about right.
You were young, and then you got married and you moved out. That's it. That was the scenario. So teenagers have only been around as like a stage of life for 70 years, and the first 40, like, what are you doing if it's 1940 to 1980? In 1980s we had punk rock, and then so, like, from the 80s to the 2000s, people were like, oh, this is what it's like to be a teenager, and that's just kind of dragging along. And then you have 2000 to 2020 ish, and people are like, oh, well, we're just teenagers, we don't have anything we have to do in life, and the lack of a coming of age ceremony of some kind from I'm a child and now I'm an adult has ruined society, on top of the other issues. And I realize I'm on my soapbox. We'll get back to the book here in a second. But that has led to people like Goggins and Navy SEALs and other people who have done hard things, whether it's Green Rangers or Green Berets, people going, and the young men going, I want to do that. Not even sign up for the military, but like, I want to respect myself, because they don't respect themselves. They're sitting around doing nothing all day, and that's just their lives. And so someone says, hey, there's a bar you can hit, but you have to set it. And then they start comparing themselves with a Goggins. It's like, yeah, you don't have to get up at 4 a.m. and run. But, like, you will respect yourself differently if you do it and no one else is doing it, and you go, damn, I did that shit. So it's not, I realize it's not for you, but I'm still gonna jostle you about it.
No, like, see, here's the thing. It's not that it's not for me, and it's not that I really hate Goggins. It's this nonsensical hustle bro bullcrap that's on TikTok. Whether it's the red pills or Peterson by himself, there's nothing wrong with him. Goggins by himself, there's nothing wrong with him. It's the channels that cut up their teachings, their sayings, their whatever, into 15-second blocks out of context that sounds like absolute bullshit. Like, so this new entrepreneurial thing, you know why you're a piece of crap and you don't have any self-worth, and you drive a Honda Civic? Well, it's because you're not, investing in real estate property. You're not working 17 hours a day. Or that little fucking twerp that was caught saying he doesn't have HR at his company. He's like, why do I need HR? If somebody's not working out, we just fire them. And you're like, okay, whatever, dude, shut up. Like, it's that nonsense. And that's why my exposure to Goggins has only been him yelling at people. And you're like, shut up. You were fat, then you were not fat, then you achieved great things. Take your cookie and go home. Nobody cares. And and then you gave me some context for Goggins specifically, and that's fine. But the rest of it is just irritating as hell.
It's because they're posers.
And it's worthless. They're posers. Exactly.
Yeah, they're not actually doing anything. Because when
Right.
you do something, you can actually speak to it with authority.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
And then they take other people's work, like Goggins, fine, like Peterson, and they cut it up into 15-second talking points, and they by themselves are maybe fine talking points. It's like, hey, you should care about how you look. You should put some thought into your appearance. Great. But the way it's presented in the zeitgeist and the amount of crap that just, keeps billowing out of social media is just so freaking annoying. Like, I just want to watch memes and I want to laugh. I want to maybe see a cute puppy or a clip from a movie or some sort of music clip. Okay, and then every other one is some moron screaming at me that I am worthless because I don't have a real estate business or I don't flip houses.
yeah, I've been meaning to talk to you about that.
Yeah, I don't get up at 3 a.m. like this dumb motherfucker and, I don't know, meditate and go for a run. I got other shit to do. I got a life to live.
Dean, some of these people just like excommunicate their family if they buy HR for their companies. Just like the Akura family. They don't have HR. They kicked out their daughter.
Yeah, the Akura definitely don't have HR.
No. Oh, it gets worse. Wait till you meet more of the Akuras. It gets worse. But we in Chapter 6 learned that Akura, well, what's the mother's name? Malice. Akura Malice. She kicked out her prized daughter, Akura Mercy. What? Why? Why do you think that she kicked her out?
She's a threat. If she can beat somebody stronger than her, like her limp-wristed boyfriend who dumped her because
Harmony, Akura Harmony doesn't take losing very well. That was was funny.
Yeah, she's like, yeah, he dumped me because I kind of beat him up.
Do you know who this guy is? Akura Harmony family member of yours? Well, he's like a distant cousin. Oh, okay. And we were engaged. What? Yeah. Well, he doesn't take losing very well. Losing? What? Yeah, I beat him and he didn't like that. Talk about male pride. Love that. That was funny. That was a good time.
Yep. So speaking of male pride or males and females fighting,
are we getting away from the book again?
Just for 3 seconds.
Okay.
And speaking of IG reels, apparently in some podunk country of Europe, they have now where 2 women in an MMA fight try to beat up a man. So the video I watched was this big 6'8", belly out to 4 foot. He wasn't a fit man, but he was a big man, a big old belly. And there was 2 little women, and by little I mean they picked petite women, dressed in MMA outfits and headgear, and he's just in his shorts wailing at them. I'm like, what is going on in the world? What the hell? I mean,
it's better than feeding people to lions, I guess.
Whatever. Or dragons. Feeding people to dragons. Annoying dragons with stupid last names.
We'll take that as a transition.
Yeah.
Do you enjoy the naming structure of the Akura family?
I guess so. I'm okay with it.
Didn't stand out to you?
It seemed par for the course with a fantasy or an anime or a shonen book like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just a naming structure that's not Western. So I just take it in stride. I'm like, yep, these are the names of this family.
All right, fair enough.
The thing that did stand out to me is the dragon names. I'm like, that was a change.
Willa has a cat, and he just lets him walk over the keyboard, and that's the name of the dragon.
Yeah, because Akura Malice, Akura Mercy,
Akura
Lindon,
Harmony.
Yaren, Athan of the Aurelius family, all those are, so far, all those in world are normal Cradle names. But then, Akirina thought, or whatever it is. Now I'm making stuff up.
Sefernatoth.
Yeah. Yeah,
Whatever. Yeah.
Sofarina thought and Akirina thought, those were completely different. So they stood out to me. I wasn't taken aback.
I like the patterns of like, okay, this family is going to be named after virtues and vices, right? Like malice, charity, harmony, justice is another one that we'll meet later. That's just fun to me. Also, the choosing the naming structure of a different language, where it's like last name, first name, right? Like family name, first name. What family are you from? Who are you from? And really living into the world. I love catching little details like that. That's fun to me. Second question that I had was, are you enjoying Yaren getting to know Mercy?
Yeah, I am. It's fun because Mercy's, dare I say, a little bit more happy and kind of cheerful.
She is.
Yeah. And Yaren is not happy and she's not cheerful. It's exciting to see them together because you have Yaren, who we love Yaren for being Yaren, and then we have Mercy, and she's not bubbly, but she does bring a little bit more cheer to the conversation.
Yeah.
And she gets tired and she's like pooped out, and Yaren's like, ugh, fine, I guess we'll rest, paraphrasing. But Yaren is determined, and her usual grizzled self at the tender age of whatever she is, like 17. She's already grizzled. And Mercy's just like, yeah, we're going to do a thing. Let's go do a thing. I'm happy to do a thing. I also can beat up my fiance. What do you do? Like, she's that kind of peppy. She's peppy. I think she's peppy, but not in an obnoxious way where you want to strangle her. But she's cheerful. I think that's the proper word for it. And then you have Yaren, who's grizzled. So it's a trope, but it's played out really well.
Well, it's another contrast. It's another juxtaposition, right? We talked about the juxtaposition earlier of implying that a character is really powerful by characters that are fighting currently being scared of him. Well, this is just another juxtaposition of your grizzled Yaren and your happy-go-lucky cheerleader Mercy, and she's like the cheerleader that's down to earth. She's like the normal girl cheerleader who's coming in that other cheerleaders don't like because they're like, no, we're supposed to be different. We're a different class of people. Da-da-da. And she's like, no, this is fun. Like, let's have fun. This is a good time. Will does a really great job, and I'm seeing these themes, at least in Ghostwater here, of writing contrast. We've got contrast in characters of power level. We've got contrast in characters of personality. And he also does a really great job of letting us know what the characters want, which, and I've complained about this, is like Head Full of Ghosts we did just before, so 2 books ago. We talked about this in Ball as well, where it's like, well, what does the character want? What do they want? Like, tell me what they want, because then we know where we're going. And I've said this for a few books now. If I don't know where the character's going, I can't be emotionally involved. And this applies to our real life too. Like, if your friend just badgers you with like, yeah, I went to the watering hole and I did this and I did that, and you're like, okay, but like, what are you doing with your life? And because otherwise it's the same old story every time. But we want to know what's next. We want to know where we're headed, even if you get thrown off course, even if you get like walls or issues that come up, like things you have to overcome. We need to know there's a direction. And most of us who are not hippies get frustrated when people aren't moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. I have a couple of friends that are kind of stuck in that cycle. And
I told you you're not allowed to talk about my journal anymore on air.
Last time, I promise.
Okay,
last time. So I have a couple of friends that are just like that, unfortunately. And we all have different roads. I want to qualify what I'm going to say with this. We all have different roads, different paths. Some of us are a little bit more entrepreneurial, some of us less. Some of us want to do things at 3 a.m. and go for runs at 3:30 and exercise, and then spend 8 hours on a project, and then after dinner spend 2 more hours on something else. Some people have the energy for that and have the mindset for that, and that's fine. There's others who don't want anything to do with that, and still live normal, fulfilling lives and mature and advance as human beings without doing all of that stuff. There's others that are either constantly spinning their wheels, the high energy ones, constantly spinning their wheels, but they have no dedication, no discipline, nothing, and they're going from one thing to the other, and everything is just ending up in failure. Or you have the lazy sloths who are just sitting there picking the lint out of their belly buttons, going, why isn't the world giving me $3 million so I can start my own real estate business? Full circle to, the hustle boys.
I see what you did there. Yeah.
And I have a couple of folks that are kind of more on the high energy end, but nothing ever works out because they do it foolishly. They have no life skills. They're fools in the clear sense of the word. And they're my friends, so I love them.
So you're not going to dox them on air?
So I love them, and I'm not going to dox them. But to bring it back to your point, the story that's presented every time we talk is the same. And it's sometimes even a repeat of older stories to kind of prove to themselves in their mind, to justify it, I suppose, more than anything, to their current position, to justify their current position. And I've heard the story. I had the T-shirt made with your life story, brother. I can't help you. And after a while, you just listen and you go, yeah, man, that totally sucks. Sorry to hear that. And that's it.
Well, this gets into the point that I mentioned a minute ago, where the reason that we have no clear direction, partly, it's not fully, like everything is in part, because the world is just far too complex. It really is. And if you think you understand a situation within reason, there's probably more details that you need to understand as well. It probably doesn't justify the actions necessarily of the person, but like there's always more details because the world's complex. Sit down and journal for a minute. Like, figure out why you want something or why you like something. Like, you'll understand the world is complex, hopefully. But the point I mentioned earlier was there's no coming of age ceremony from childhood to adulthood. And I was a leadership person as a part of this group, and they'd call them the young adult group. And I would fight. I'd literally get Slava level angry. I'm like, you can't call them young adults. Like, you're literally doing them a disservice. You're stealing a decade of their life. Like, when are you an adult? You're not an adult when you're 21? No, if you can be tried legally in court, you're an adult, period. That's it.
Exactly.
That's it. Anyway, so to add to your point, I think part of the issue is we don't have coming of age ceremonies anymore for like, hey, you're not a kid anymore. You're an adult. But this is what ancient cultures, and to tie this back into the book, like ancient cultures understood, hey, you're not a kid anymore. No more playing around. You got to help pick berries. You got to go till the field. You got to do these things. Like, now you're an adult.
It's a matter of survival and a matter of honor.
And duty. We've lost duty.
Yeah.
And
like, you can still have it in 2024. It's just people are lazy and dumb.
Well, duty looks different, too. Like, not everyone's agricultural. Your parents might not own a farm, and that's okay. But then your duty is, like, going to school to learn programming, if that's your thing, or going to school to be a chef, if that's your thing. Like, your duty is your job. Your duty is to make your country better. Your duty is to... And look, if that means that you want to be a justice warrior, do it. But don't just post on Instagram. Like, go do it. Go run for office. Go make change. And I don't care what your position is. It can be one that's opposed to mine. It probably is. But go and act on it. That's your duty. Your duty is not to hit like on Instagram and then hit share because that's what you think. No, like, go contribute to society. That's your duty, like Lindon does. Bad transition, but here we are.
No, it's fine. It's fine. And I think I want to capstone this, and we can move on. Unless you understand the complexity of life, the complexity of limitations, that not everything is going to be 100% great. Like the core example, where he can veil his pure core, but not his black flame core. Not everything is as it seems, to your point, and you have to make incremental changes, right? Well, maybe you can do 2% in a couple of different categories. Nothing happens automatically. There's always a struggle. There's always some things you get ahead at, like you jump at 70%. You just, woof, you move forward. And then other stuff, you'll be stuck at a 2% increase for the next 5 years. In 2024, I think we are numb to those things.
So I want to bring this back to Lindon, and there's no right answer here, but why is Lindon not depressed?
He doesn't have time for it.
Sure. But okay, we're talking 2024. Let's try and tie some of the side quests together here. Lindon's not depressed. He should be. He was the lowest of his class in his clan. No one believed in him. He was given no opportunities. His parents literally considered him such a runt they weren't going to spend any resources on him.
Yeah, they were going to steal his friggin' passion fruit that he fought for. I still remember that. That pissed me off.
That's what I'm talking about. And he's still super humble and getting like just spit on in everywhere that he goes. Why is he not depressed? Right? Like, and again, there's no right answer because this is a story. But if we're going to tie some of these side quests together into relating to the novel, he should be, but he's not. And so, like, what theory craft with me? Like,
the simple answer is he doesn't have time for it. The more complex answer, as you peel back the onion of this theory, is I think he's seen enough of the world at this point, and there's more to see, obviously.
Yeah.
But he's seen a lot of the world. He's met different people. He's met people who have been really nice to him and have helped him, people who've been kind to him, forget nice, and people who have tried to kill him, and a guy who took his arm. So he's had a variety, a breadth of experience. And I think in his own way, even though he's still young, still foolish at times, like anybody would be, he has seen enough of the world where he understands the complexities. That's the connection. We talked about complexities for the last 3 side quests and things not being as they seem sometimes. He doesn't have anything to numb himself with.
Oh, that's good. That's a good point.
All he has is survival. I'm talking about he is constantly on the move. He's traveling with a group of people. He is trying to achieve the highest level of the sacred arts. And there are, in the immediate context of Lindon's life, momentary eruptions where he has to save Orthos in Ghostwater, fight Karenathot. So he has a lot going on. What's in front of him is what's driving him.
I think you hit on a really great point here. Is Lindon doesn't have the luxury of doing anything but fighting for his life. There's a quote from Sun Tzu in The Art of War where he says, "Throw your soldiers into positions whence there is no escape, where they prefer death to flight. If they will face death, there is nothing they may not achieve. Officers and men alike will put forth their uttermost strength." It's this idea of death ground. Like, if your back is against the wall, if you need an example, the battle at, not Minas Tirith, Helm's Deep in Lord of the Rings, they're against a wall, and they literally just have to hold the keep for 3 days. Dawn of the third day, Gandalf says, you just have to keep fighting a little longer. There's no, "Oh, I'm sorry, buddy. Yeah, you can come in, orcs. It's okay. We'll figure it out together." Nope. There's evil in the world, and it needs to be fought, and that's what you do. That's your duty. And Lindon understands that he doesn't have the luxury of doing anything but surviving. He has to keep moving forward. And to your point as well, like, he's seen enough of the world and digested it enough to say there is evil in the world, there is suffering. He lost an arm by his, like, pseudo mentor because he didn't really accept Athan. Like, he did accept Athan at the point, but he kind of didn't. And he's like, you could, like, I still love that moment. Like, it's one of the most touching moments, and, like, real moments. Touching's not the right word. One of the most real moments in the series so far, where Athan is confronted for his lack of care for his disciple.
Yeah, apathy.
I don't know if it's apathy. I think it was lack of planning, because apathy would mean he wouldn't care, but he does care about Lindon, right? Like, he was just prioritizing his prerogatives above Lindon's well-being, right? It was a prioritization issue, I think, based on what we see, because he does care about Lindon, but he was trying to also do a bigger thing. Even though Lindon doesn't understand it necessarily, he's getting a glimpse that, like, there's a bigger world here. And even though in the first book, and I think Will did a great job, he lays out where we're going. Serial shows him a vision of the nature of the world, and we know it's a lot bigger. And so even though book 1 feels slow to new readers, we can understand, like, we're going somewhere. And this is, I think, what gets me in a lot of the books that we read is, like, where are we going? What is happening? And it's one of my qualms that I have regularly is like, well, where are we going? What do the characters want? And Yeah, it's pretty easily spoon-fed here with Will's book and series. But in other books, like Roadside Picnic, I know what Red wants. He wants to get these items or devices. That's what he wants. And so like just telling me what the character wants, whether it's subtle or obvious, it allows me as the reader to know that I'm on the journey with you instead of like maybe we should read a mystery novel because I'm realizing that maybe I will have different thoughts in a mystery novel because I know it's a mystery novel. But in most stories, you need to tell me what the character wants so that I know where we're going.
I think the words you're looking for are implicit and explicit when you're talking about subtle and obvious. I mean, potato, maybe. But in literature, I suppose the words are there's an implicit or explicit way of telling the audience something, telling the reader something. But I think you're absolutely right. And mystery would be interesting to add to our collection. Would have to find something that is not necessarily Sherlock Holmes or something like that, but a true famous classic like mystery novel. Maybe something by Agatha Christie. But even then, when you figure out who did it and why they did it, it still ties back together. So the point that you're trying to make, I think, is if you understand the motivations of a character, where he's going, why he's doing it, and everything is built out in a way that's engaging,
Mm-hmm.
right? You kind of compels you to read more.
Yeah, we as the audience are here to be entertained. You and I think, want to learn something as well. We want to apply things to our lives, even though it's fantasy stuff. Maybe that's just me. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. But we want to go on the journey, and we can't go on the journey if you're a bad storyteller, which we've looked at. And I'm really not trying to bash these people at the moment, but just like as examples that we've complained about. Ball, kind of a letdown. Head Full of Ghosts, kind of a letdown. City in the City, kind of like what do these people want? What do these characters want? We don't know. And by not letting us know in an obvious enough way, it doesn't have to actually be obvious, and it can be a red herring, but in an obvious enough way, we as the audience don't feel satisfied. We've been telling stories for 10,000 years as a human race. So like we know how to do this well, and when we choose to do it not well, and it doesn't mean you can't try new things. People try new things with story all the time. Survivor, brilliant. Love that the book is like backwards almost, right? Like that's cool. That's fun. But we still know what the character wants and we know where we're going. Even if it gets derailed or even if it gets on a side quest, we know we're going a direction. And as the audience, we want that because otherwise we're just like, well, why am I watching this movie? Which is why a lot of people don't like slice of life books or films because they're like, well, what happened here? Now, some people do like those, but I feel like most people I talk to, they're like, it was okay.
I like them in slices. No pun intended. I can't.
Slices
I won't be
of
able
life.
to watch. Yeah, I won't be able to watch like 10 in a row or even 4 in a row. But if it's a really good movie, if it's a really good cinematographer, a good story, good dialogue, compelling interaction between characters, it grips you. You can make it a good one. Well, most of the time, if it's just a story pulled out of somebody's butt, it's not interesting. And that goes to one of the biggest differences between us, where I like some ambiguity in my stories for the right reasons, in the right context. But I like some ambiguity and weirdness in my story, so I'll sit and watch some sort of avant-garde kooky thing, or people would call it kooky, and I'll enjoy the crap out of it. But anyway, I digress as I normally do. You should bring us back to a portal in the deep woods of Ghostwater.
So it's interesting. Like we've done a handful of side quests this episode, and this is something I sent to Slava. Is objectively speaking, in like chapter 8 and a little bit before, when Lindon is in the cave, he's not doing anything. He's eating food and he's trying to survive. He's going out and he's trying to avoid the enemy and get something to eat, bring it back to him and Orthos. That's it. That's what he's doing. And if you tell me that's the bullet point that we're covering, okay, well, that doesn't sound very interesting, objectively speaking. But Will does a really good job at building tension because he keeps switching back to the point of view of Akari, and she is like, why is the Black Flame here? Because they're arch enemies, which is good. That's good tension. he escapes her a couple times, and then she's like, okay, we're going to just kill him and everything else the second he comes out. And Lindon gets, this kind of like power level upgrade a little bit. But if you look at it, he's not doing anything, but Will made it interesting. He made it engaging, which is what we wanted a book. But if you tell a friend like, hey, yeah, it's this guy in a cave, and then he like leaves the cave, gets something to eat, comes back in the cave. Like that's what he does for like a chapter and a half. And you're like, well, that's doesn't sound very thrilling. I don't know why you like this book. But what happens is he takes this moment of objective like uninterest, of boredom, makes it interesting, and then ups the ante with the tension between the gold dragons and the black dragons, because Lindon ends up creating a new enemy by killing Akari, because then Sefernatoth now wants revenge. And so Will, again, tells us what the character wants, and the character's the enemy. But we see that point of view, and I absolutely love this, is we see the point of view of Akari dying, her remnant going to her sister lamenting, and then we get to jump chapters over to Yaren and Mercy, and they are doing their thing, and then they hear a scream in the woods that's just this massive roar, and it's like, well, we know exactly what that's about. And it feels like a movie, because it's just pop, pop, pop. And so Will takes something that's super boring. I'm leaving a cave, I'm going to survive for a minute, get something to eat, bring it back to my partner. That's what I'm doing. Not interesting. But he creates tension, shows us more about the characters, and he actually builds into this like multi-generational feud between two races, the gold dragons and the black dragons. And then he shows us like our other characters, Yaren and Mercy. What do they want? They want to find the other portal. That's what they want. We know that. It's obvious, and we're going on this journey with them. But then there's this blip that ties things back together. We hear Sefernatoth roaring about her sister's death. It feels like a movie. It's great. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, it is. And that goes back to my point, right? Where you can have a slice of life, but if it's compelling...
It's tension. You watch John Wick, and there's tension. But it's the same fight scene for an hour and a half. That's all that it is. You want tension. We want this contrast. Like, I was thinking about this yesterday. Sorry to interrupt you. You can finish in a second. Art is contrast. That's the thought that I had. Literally yesterday, well, I was thinking about it because of Will's ability to do juxtaposition. Art is contrast. Even if you just put up a white canvas with nothing on it in the middle of a city or in a museum against a black wall, like, art is contrast. Because when things are the same, you put up a white blank canvas on a white wall. People aren't even going to notice it's there. There's no tension.
Yep. And one final note I want to make on this is we get switch between Lindon, his sneaking around, Orthos teaching him how to veil himself, but not all the way, his fight with Ykirinathot, and then Ykirinathot dying. We see outside of Ghostwater with Yaren and Mercy, the scream that you mentioned. There are these jumps in between scenes that are seamless, and it creates that tension. And it creates interest in something that would normally be a boring slice of life. Yaren sneaking around like a homeless person trying to sneak food in.
Yeah. The episode here is wrapping up, but we did promise earlier that we were going to discuss Will's notes about Ghostwater. And so let's wrap this up by diving in, pun intended, because it's a world full of water, to talk about this really quick as we wind up our episode here.
So the tier structure in Ghostwater, the Tomb of the Monarch. From his notes, this is Will Wight's notes, it's a dungeon. Each layer goes deeper into the natural ocean chasm. The top is a dome over the water, but the deeper you go, the more treacherous it is. Top layer, the garden on the waves, pre-gold stage. Floor 1, the reef, low gold, cyan water, which regenerates Madra. Floor 2, the forest, high gold, purple water, which provides mental clarity and rejuvenation. Floor 3, the aquarium, true gold, deep blue water, which cleanses Madra. Floor 4, the caverns, underlord, pink water, which increases Madra density potency. Floor 5, the oasis, overlord, Orange Water, which increases Madra depth core capacity. Floor 6, the Underworld. Archlord, Emerald Water, which increases life force and lifespan. And Floor 7, the Abyss. North Strider's personal training rooms, sleeping chambers, and Soulsmith Foundry, etc. Ghostwater.
Yes, that's from Will Wight's blog. What date was that?
2020.
Mm.
October 1st, 2020.
So Will even addresses, he says at the top of this thing, he says originally the Ghostwater complex was a lot bigger. And it sounds fun when you look at it, because, if you're into this type of books, you enjoy a dungeon every now and then. And he also notes here about meeting Zeal for the first time, which is fun. But he realized through his notes, and this is that thing we talked about earlier, where you have your notes and how you want to write and the things that you want to say versus the actual application and working out of that. And instead of doing something that we're all familiar with, where it's like, okay, you go floor 1, floor 2, floor 3, floor 4, and you're just going down into the depths of hell, into the abyss. He changed it to be these little bubbles that he calls habitats. You're in the ocean, and instead of going down, you're going like distant, and the further into the distance you go, but you could go to any of the different habitats. We just don't, because Lindon is looking for specific things that Dross leads him to. So, and eventually needing to get to Ghostwater, because we figure out that is in the second half of the book. But I love picturing this because it's like, I would think it's very difficult. Like, it's this bubble that has air in it, and, a temple or whatever where the water is, you have to go swim to get there. And I really don't love swimming. It's not my thing. But it feels like a new version of a dungeon, because you could go to the final level if you want to. You're just going to die. So he gives Lindon the freedom to do what he wants, but we still have a partial journey that we go on of seeing what this dungeon would look like from a outsider's point of view. But I also think it's good that he didn't make it like this layered dungeon, because frankly, it's been done. So do something different.
And that's exactly what Will did. To read from his notes, I want to give something distinct from anything I'd already done in Traveler's Gate, and I'm a big fan of underwater aesthetic.
Another thing he mentions here is, in his notes, he wanted the story to be 2 guys, 2 girls, and each one to have their own real villain trying to stop them, which I'd say adds to the tension. This book to date, I think, has the most tension of all 5 of the books, because book 1, we're just kind of getting established with the world. Book 2, we see that the world is a little bigger than we realized, and we don't know anything. Lindon is a slave at one point. Book 3, Lindon is training, and we're like, oh, okay, there's like more options, and then a coup happens. Book 4 is just too short, and he joins a police force, in the world, and it's like, okay, fine. And there is some tension, but it's not as much as we have in this book, in my opinion.
And I think what this book accomplishes is Will giving the chance to Lindon to catch up to everybody else. Because he's always been kind of straggling behind, right?
Yeah.
This gives him a little bit gives him a little bit less distance between him and Yaren and the rest of the team as far as their levels go.
Yeah. And another juxtaposition here, because I really love how authors put themselves out there in their notes, where they're like, hey, here's what I was planning. He blatantly says, like, I wanted a counterpart from Harmony, who's the villain, but not a villain. And so he made Zeal, who's still a powerful being, who's had a long life and has excelled above his peers and was a leader of sorts, but he's a juxtaposed character where he like, I don't really care. I'm just trying to get better, but I don't think that it's going to happen, but I'm still trying, sort of. His master, the Beast King, which we'll get into next time, because we don't really meet Zeal in this section, but we're looking at the notes and it's relevant. He's like, Zeal is apathy. Like, Zeal is just like, ugh. But the thing is, he still wants to care for people.
He's ambitious, but unlike Harmony, he doesn't care about appearance, reputation, or a political agenda.
Right.
To your point, he cares about the sacred beast that he's connected with or has contracts with. He cares more about them than anything else. Lindon reverts back to this one in gratitude and humility. And Zeal's like, yeah, whatever, just drink the water. I don't care. Do I look like a guy with a plan? He's like, leave me alone. You could drink the water, whoever you are. I mean, I'm paraphrasing and adding my own little Slava flair to it, but that's pretty much it. Zeal is not in the business of political intrigue or shame, honor, the same way that the other clans and people in this book are, or in this world, for that matter.
Yeah, and I'll give you a little more backstory next episode about Zeal and his background, which is pretty sad. But he, in his current state, I'll give you this little nugget. In his current state, his body is the evidence of his biggest failure.
Okay.
Which sucks, but it is what it is. And we'll get more into him. Zeal is one of my favorite characters, and I just love him. But thank you for joining us on SideQuest today. We're very happy to be back from our break. Next episode, we will look at chapters 10 through the end of the book. And we have a special episode. As we do guest episodes with the Cradle series. But we have a little bit of a surprise for you. So it's going to get wild and wacky and crazy, but we're looking forward to it. So make sure you tune in for the next episode of SideQuest.
And before you go, make sure to rate us on your favorite podcast platform, because that helps us get in front of more viewers. And we'll see you next time on SideQuest.